Welcome to PhD Media and Design Innovation Information Session. My name is Yini Ni, the Graduate Program Administrator. Tonight, I have my coworkers join me. Tonisha Boyle, the lead for the Graduate Program Administrator. And we have Daniel Garcia, the Manager of Administration. And then we have Graduate Program Director, John Shiga. Okay, agenda for tonight's session, we have very short intro and Jiang is going to continue with the program overview and admissions requirements. I will continue with admissions and funding, and end we have a Q&A session. All right, Jiang, over to you.
Great, thanks, Elaine. So before we give you the overview of the program, I'd like to do a land acknowledgement. Toronto is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. Okay, so welcome again. My name is, as Elaine mentioned, my name is John Shiga. I'm the Graduate Program Director for the MDI program, as we call it, the Media and Design Innovation PhD program. And today we're just going to give you a bit of an overview of the program. And we'll talk a little bit about the application process. I have a few tips for you in terms of preparing your application. And we'll talk about funding as well as a few other aspects of the program. So one of the things I like to highlight right off the bat with the MDI program is that it is a PhD program that is quite different from a lot of other PhD programs out there. And that difference manifests in a few different ways. One of them is the manner in which we put practice at the center of what we do. And what I mean by that is that our students do engage in a quite rigorous way with theory and with traditional scholarly methodology, but additionally, we support our students to develop practice-based research, which takes a variety of different forms in our program, but generally speaking, they are non-traditional methods for producing knowledge, non-traditional, at least in the academic scholarly context. We have a range of different types of approaches to the notion of media and design, a variety of different fields in which people explore what media design do and how they engage with different kinds of social, cultural, political, etc. issues. So the program, the MDI program, is the first practice-based doctoral program at our university, which is really exciting. It launched, we're still pretty new. We launched in fall 2021. So we're in, now we're in year 3 of the program. And our students, one of the big advantages of the MDI program is that it provides our students with access to facilities like labs and different maker spaces around our faculty, which is called the Creative School. We have 9 different schools in the Creative School, and our students have access to both professors as well as facilities around those 9 different schools. So that's quite exciting and allows our students to really tailor the degree according to their interests. We do have dedicated space for MDI students in the Catalyst, which is a beautiful space on the 2nd floor of our building at TMU that is a hub for research and a home base for the MDI students. Here's a couple of photos of the Catalyst space. We use it for a lot of different events. Our faculty research events, our graduate student research events are often held in the Catalyst. And actually, this year we have all of our required MDI courses are also based in the Catalyst. And we have the MDI practice lab, which is a space that our students have keys to, where they can access that space 24/7 for studying and collaboration. We have a number of different other labs beyond the Catalyst around the Creative School. One of them is the Creative Innovation Studio. And we don't really have time to go through all of the different labs, but the reason I'd like to highlight this one, the Creative Innovation Studio, is that it ties in with some of the non-traditional approaches our students have to research creation. So approaches like storytelling and music, fashion design, and maker culture. The Creative Innovation Studio is a really great example of a space that's designed to support that kind of work by both faculty and students. We also have the Creative Technology Lab, which is a huge space in one of our newest buildings on campus that has all kinds of technology, as you can see on the screen there, from robotics to 3D printing to laser cutting, you name it, they likely have it in this lab. But the one thing I like to stress about this space, as well as the others around the creative school, is it's not just that they're full of technology, that's important, but the other important part is that they provide staff to help train students to use the technology. So you can go into one of these labs and set up one-on-one meetings or take seminars and workshops to learn how to use technology that you may never have been exposed to before. So I think that's really important for our program, especially since our students are often building on practices that they've already learned and in some cases have worked with for a number of years, but also want to expand into new areas. And these types of spaces are designed to support that. So in terms of the application requirements, there are a number of different components to it. One of the really important parts of it is the statement of interest, which is, as you can see on the screen, 500 to 1,000 words. And that's a really important opportunity for you in your application to provide a description of the type of research and creative work, practice-based work that you intend to do in the program if you're admitted. It's, I think, important to highlight that what you plan to do in the program would really benefit from the type of faculty and the types of spaces and the types of courses that we offer in the MDI curriculum. So I would really try to tailor that statement of interest as much as possible to the MDI program. You may be applying to 2 or 3 different PhD programs, and that's perfectly fine. But please do try to tailor this particular statement of interest to our program as much as you can. The other component is a curriculum vitae. The CV should be updated with all of the things that you've done up until the point that you've submitted your application. And then we ask for transcripts from all of your previous degree granting institutions that you've attended. Even if you didn't complete the degree, we ask that you submit the transcript from that particular institution. 2 letters of recommendation, that's also important. And good idea, another little tip for you is to, if possible, to share your statement of interest or other parts of your application with your referees so that they can really speak to the type of work that you're planning to do in the program. The other components are, and we often get questions about this part, we also ask for samples of creative work and samples of written work. And if you go to our website, it will say something along the lines of we want some visual samples of creative work, not exceeding 15 slides or etc. I just want to clarify that the important part of this is that it's creative work. It could actually be non-visual work. I've had a couple of people reach out to me this year who have audio recordings or podcasts or something along those lines that are definitely examples of creative work, but they're not visual, and that's perfectly fine. I think that the idea here was to give people an opportunity to think about ways in which they could represent time-based media in a visual way. So if that works for you, that's great. But if it's purely audio, please feel free to submit the link to that as well. The important part is that it's creative. For the written work, what we'd like you to do is submit work that, in a lot of cases, this will be your previous academic or scholarly writing, from a previous program degree that you've completed. If you don't have access to, papers and so forth that you've written recently, then you can submit another type of written work that you've prepared, maybe professionally. The important part is that you try to demonstrate your research skills, your analytical skills, your ability to make an argument. And non-academic writing can, of course, do that. It's just that it's often done in a slightly different way. So try to think about, well, what kind of written work can I submit that demonstrates my skills in research and an ability to make and support an argument would be my tip for you there. We also ask that you connect with a faculty supervisor. This is a little bit different than at the master's level. Usually at the master's level, we just ask you to, mention a couple of faculty members that you could potentially work with. In the MDI PhD applications, what we're hoping for is that you've actually connected with a faculty member, that you've reached out by email, in most cases, to a prospective supervisor, explained a little bit about what you're interested in doing if you're admitted to the MDI program, and asking them if they would consider supervising you should you be admitted. In a lot of cases, faculty would say yes. If you're admitted, happy to supervise your work. If the faculty member doesn't feel it's a great fit, then they'll likely have other suggestions for you, other faculty members you can contact. So I would highly recommend reaching out to faculty, as early as you can to make that connection. All right, so a few more tips for preparing your application. Start your application early. I think that it doesn't hurt to start it early, even if you don't have a lot of material to enter right away. Just getting the application set up in our system is a good idea, and then you can save your progress and come back to it later on and add material. You don't have to do it all at once. So there's definitely no harm. And in fact, I think it's a really good idea to start it early. It'll just give you a sense of what you can sort of go through the whole thing and sort of see, step by step what you're going to need to enter, and just making sure that you have everything you need to complete the application, even if it's not ready yet. At least it's on your radar. I would also recommend submitting by the first consideration date. That's really important in terms of being considered for scholarships. And the first consideration date this year is January 19th, I believe. Is that right, Elaine? Yeah. Okay. So January 19th, yeah, I would strongly recommend that you try to get your application in before January 19th, or by January 19th. I would also recommend selecting work samples that demonstrate your skills in writing, research, and creative work. So try to, as I said earlier, for the written pieces, try to provide examples that showcase your ability to analyze material, to make an argument about it. For your creative work, as I said, the important bit there is that it is creative in some way. It doesn't necessarily need to be visual, though. Our faculty profiles on the MDI website are a really helpful resource, I think, in terms of finding prospective supervisors. We have a lot of, actually, we've updated a lot of our faculty bios recently. So you can sort of see what our faculty have been working on in the past, what they're working on right now, and what they're teaching. So that, I think, is a good amount of information to go on in terms of figuring out one or two people who would be a good match for you, and you can reach out to them. Also, as I said earlier, email a potential supervisor before you submit your application, and ideally get confirmation from them that they would be interested in supervising your work. In your statement of interest, as I said, this is a slightly different way of putting it, provide a clear rationale for why you are applying to a practice-based PhD program. So I said earlier, make sure that your statement of interest is tailored to the MDI program, that it's not sort of a generic type of statement of interest. And part of what that means is to really emphasize the practice-based nature of what you're planning to do. There are lots of different PhD programs in Canada that relate to media and or design. Ours is one of the few, I would say, that really puts practice at the core of what we do. So in terms of tailoring your statement of interest, it makes a lot of sense to really underline and emphasize what exactly is practice-based about your proposed project. So this is a really high-level overview of our curriculum structure. And as you can see here, it's a 4-year program. And the first year, you have 2 required courses in the fall, the doctoral colloquium and the qualitative research methods course. And in the winter, you have 1 required course, which is practice-based research methods. And you also have your first chance to take an elective with us. And on the point of electives, I think this is coming up later, but I'll just point out that we have electives all across the 9 different schools, or almost all of the 9 different schools in the creative school, and you would pick electives from one of those schools. So you have a lot of choice in terms of which electives you take in our program. And then in the spring, you do a directed readings course with your, usually with your supervisor. And that is a really good opportunity to kind of begin really drilling down into the areas that you're going to be focusing on in your dissertation and creative project. So it's a kind of customized course for your particular research and creative interests. In year 2, you have 1 elective in the fall and another in the winter. So only 1 course per semester. And the reason for that is at this point, you're really starting to kind of narrow down to your specialization, right? So you're choosing electives that ideally have a strong connection to the project you're planning to do. And we only have you do 1 course in each of those semesters because at the same time, you're going to be getting started on your comprehensive exam, which are a set of papers and projects that allow you to survey and explore existing work, both creative, artistic, and scholarly, in the areas that you're planning to do your project in. It's a fair bit of work to do the comprehensive exam, so we sort of carve out the time in the second year for that by only requiring you to do 1 course per semester. Then in year 3 and again in year 4, you don't have any coursework at all because at that point you're really focusing on your dissertation and project. There are a number of different stages to the dissertation. There's the proposal, there's the dissertation itself, and then there's the defense. But all through that period, you are going to be supported by your supervisor. You'll also have a committee composed of faculty from the program and quite oftentimes outside the program as well to help advise and guide the development of your dissertation project. Okay, so on to admissions and funding opportunities.
Thank you, John. I'm sure you have a lot of questions for John already. I'm going to go through admissions and the funding, and then we go straight to Q&A. Okay, begin. I'd like to introduce Yale School of Graduate Studies, short in YSGS. YSGS oversees all the graduate programs at the university, ranging from administration, graduate admissions, policy, marketing, and promotion. I'm sure a lot of you already searched the YSGS website about the admission requirements, scholarships, awards, and tuition, for example. If you have general questions about transcripts or English language proficiency, such questions, you can reach out to them. If you have program-specific questions, such as statement of interest, creative work, written work, feel free to reach out to us. John mentioned about first consideration deadline and stress out about this deadline, January 19, 2024, to submit your application. Yeah, I'm gonna repeat this again. So if you can submit your application by January 19, that way we can make sure your application is going to be reviewed by the community shortly after January 19. And John mentioned that if we have, if you are eligible for scholarship, we are going to enter your admissions application for scholarship competition. For international students, we do have a preferred deadline, December 10 this year, which is coming up really soon. The reason we have this deadline is we want to speed up the process to help international students. If you do get an offer from the program, you can start your study permit application early, and that way you make sure you receive it in time to join us for the fall next year. Application process, same thing. If you can submit your application on the Ontario University Application Center, even starting right now, just to get your portal set up, because it does take about 2 to 3 business days for you to receive your online identity information from the university and to set up the whole process. On the OUAC website, the application form basically asks you for your personal information, your personal status, and your academic backgrounds, and your referee information. From there, you need to wait for 2 to 3 business days. So if you want to get your application early, the best practice is to set up OUAC first and set up your online identity afterwards, and work on your application. You don't need to have to submit it all at once. You can see what process looks like and the required documents that you need. And that way, once you are ready, you can upload there. When we are talking about January 19, we are talking about a complete application, and that means all your required documents and plus your 2 reference. Graduate admissions only forward a complete application to us for review. So even if you have all the required documents ready, but if we don't receive your reference, again, your application is incomplete. So that's why we are stressing out the application process here, and then the first consideration deadline by January 19. Having said that, the application portal will remain open, and we will accept applications after first round of reviewing application. However, it depends on how many applications we receive in the first round and how many offers we issue in the first round. If the program is full, we will close the application portal shortly without a notice. Okay, let's talk about funding. We have 2 types of funding, internal and external. On this page, we're focused on internal funding. For full-time students, you will have a minimum 20,000 per year. When you receive an offer from the program, we will attach the funding to the offer letter. The funding is a combination of the awards, scholarships, graduate assistantships, research assistantships, or paid opportunities. And this, you don't need to apply. We review your application, and based on your application, each student will receive a minimum 20,000. In addition, we also have program awards. Once you are a student in the program, when the awards submission portal are open, we will reach out to you and you can apply. Okay, continue. External funding. So we have first one, Ontario Graduate Scholarship, and also the Toronto Med Graduate Scholarship. It is 15,000 a year. You need to have a minus for each of your last 2 years of your studies in order to be eligible. And if you are eligible, we will reach out to you in February or March for a supplemental form. And this is based on your admissions application submission. For the first year, we will use your admission application, and then for the second year, we will reach out to you, and we'll let you know if you are eligible. In the meantime, we also have Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council Canada Doctoral Awards. Under this awards, we have different categories. The first one is Canada Graduate Scholarship Doctoral. It's 35,000 per year for 3 years. In order to be eligible, you must be in first and second year in your PhD program. And in the meantime, we also have SHRC Doctoral Fellowship Award. It's 20,000 per year, range from 1 to 4 years. It depends on your academic backgrounds and whether you received SHRC or other scholarships before. This is for domestic applicants. Application deadline is October 1st. So we are talking about when you are in the program for the next year. In the meantime, for some of the applicants, you might be eligible for a Canada Graduate Scholarship Master. This one is really coming up December 1st, but then they have a very strict eligibility, and I encourage you to check out. And Daniel has shared the link in the chat, and you can take a look. And if you are eligible, I encourage you to apply. So those are great external scholarships. I'm not finished yet. We also have other scholarship and awards on the YSGS website, and some of you might have already studied some of them. Again, it's based on your personal backgrounds and your academic backgrounds. There are a great scholarship awards that really can help you to pay off your tuition. And the TMU, we also have assistantships. You can apply to be a graduate assistant, research assistant, or teaching assistant. You can also apply as a part-time faculty. On the TMU career website, we have all the details information there. In addition, you can also apply some of the positions that the career boosts offer. For assistant, for contract instructor opportunities, John, do you want to add something there? Is it for first year, second year, or third year, fourth year?
Yeah, thanks, Elaine. So this really depends. I think for a lot of our students, this would happen in the third or fourth year. We feel, the faculty in MDI feel quite strongly that ideally, each of our students has at least one teaching opportunity by the time they complete the degree, if they want to. And so we have a number of different ways of making that happen. Depending on your background, you may already have some teaching experience, in which case, coming into the program, maybe you could actually begin teaching in your first and second year. It's possible, and it has already happened for not many, but a few of our students. But in a lot of cases, I would say it's more like third and fourth year where teaching opportunities become, I think, more available and more kind of lined up, I guess, where the students are in terms of their progress in the program. So yeah, lots of teaching opportunities within the 9 schools within the Creative School. Also, increasingly, I think we're going to hopefully see more of our MDI students teaching in some of our master's programs within the Creative School as well. So yeah, happy to answer questions about that later on if you like.
Yeah, thank you, John. Danielle has been sending all the links to the chat. Thank you, Danielle. Danielle, do you want to add anything about the funding?
No, I think everything's great. I think just the important thing is to look for it, search for it, and apply. The links that I send you, there's a few, especially with the scholarships calendar, you can actually go in the website and add the calendar to your own Google Calendar, so then you don't miss any deadlines. So that's just like a quick tip, so that you may always keep on top of deadlines. For teaching positions, John mentioned the part-time faculty positions, but there's also teaching assistantships, graduate assistantships, research assistantships, all of those. They're usually posted on the website, I would say at the start of the term and all the way through the academic year. So as you go through the program, just take a look. If you see something based on your background that you could potentially, be part of, just don't hesitate, just apply, and then go from there. The program and our faculty offers a whole bunch of those, but also outside of our faculty, there's other faculties that offer positions, and so depending on your background, you may qualify for those as well. So it's always good to just keep an eye out on the website and see what's available. On that same website, you can also sign up to get an email notification every time there's a new position as well. So if you're looking for a specific research assistantship, for example, or teaching assistantship, you can just sign up to receive those emails, and that way you can take a quick glance. If it's relevant, great. If it's not, quick delete, and then you're good to go. So 2 quick tips to make sure you get some of those funding opportunities.
Great, thank you, Danielle. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing so we can see each other, and then feel free to type your question in the Q&A or just unmute yourself and ask questions directly.
There is one question on the Q&A I can see. I'm just going to read it aloud here. Do references receive an email upon entering their name or upon final application submission? And so this one is a 2-step process in the application. So when you will enter their name during step 1 when you're applying via the OUAC application center. Then once you pay the fee and everything, they will send the information back to us here at TMU in graduate admissions. Then graduate admissions will send you as the applicant an email saying, here's the information to upload your portals, create your account, and then you can start uploading all your documents and so on. Around that time, your referees will get the email requesting the letters of recommendation. So bottom line, as soon as you get your email from TMU asking you to upload your documents, around the same time, your referees will get the email. So you can follow up with them to make sure that they submit the required letter of recommendation.
I just see another question there. Is there a preference for the number of international students accepted? Typically, we do try to admit, we have a pretty small cohort. Typically, it's about 7 students a year domestically that we admit into the program full time. Maybe with 1 part-time student and 1 international student on top of that, I think is typically sort of, we're only 3 years in, but that's been sort of the pattern so far. But yes, if you are an international student, then as Elaine mentioned earlier, we strongly recommend that you apply even earlier than the first consideration deadline. Is it December 10th, Elaine? I can't, yeah, okay, December 10th. And the reason for that is if you're admitted, there's a little bit more time for you to get your visa application approved. So yeah, we really recommend getting it in as soon as possible if you're international.
I have a few questions. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, Kate.
Hi.
Thanks for the overview. Really appreciate it. So one of my questions is it seen in a negative way at all to sort of be building off what you did in your MA?
Yeah, good question. No, I would say that's actually a good thing that you are sort of extending, or that your PhD project would be informed in some way by your master's work. I think that actually makes for a quite strong application. You're able to demonstrate that you've already done quite a bit of preparatory work for this through your master's your master's program. So absolutely, it's not looked at negatively at all. Yeah.
Great, good to know. Thank you. Sorry to hog the floor, but I do have to leave soon, so I'm going to ask all my questions and then jet and catch the recording. So the other question is about the CV. So I did my MA from 2016 to 2020. Actually, it was at TMU. It was the ComCult program, and I did a project. And I was working full-time at that time and have continuously worked full-time. So I would that brings me to my third question. But for the CV, like I don't have any teaching or academic things really to put, like, should I be putting my papers and my classes and things that I did while in my studies?
Well, yeah, I mean that's okay. I mean we don't expect everyone to have teaching experience as they come into the program or publications. I would say to just your CV, like include whatever you think would be relevant for the committee to know about anything you did while you were in ComCult or outside of the program that prepares you, I think, for your PhD. So if you have other kinds of professional experience, not necessarily academic, like and a lot of our students actually are coming from 10 or even 20 years of work experience in a field that isn't academic. And what we've learned is that a lot of the work that they're doing does help them prepare for the PhD in terms of things like project management and all of those types of things that are really, really important at the PhD level. So yeah, feel free to include things that aren't necessarily academic in your CV. Absolutely. And then in terms of your master's work, you can go into as much detail as you want about that. I think if you've done a project, it would be important to highlight that in your CV. And then you might list a few of the courses in your CV that you completed that relate to what you're planning to do in the MDI program.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And then last one, and I'm sorry, and I hope it's relevant to someone else. So I'm hearing all these wonderful funding opportunities for full-time students. I intended to apply as a part-time student. I know that I don't have capacity on top of the program and on top of my work to take on any sort of assistantship or TA or anything like that. It's also not a goal of mine to work in the academy when I finish. Hopefully that's not held against me, but I'm wondering, like, some of the awards and scholarships and things are certainly very enticing and seem to only really be available to full-time students. Is there, should I be applying as a part-time? Or if I apply as full-time, am I bound to the schedule you went through tonight, like the 2 courses per semester kind of thing? I don't know if that's a question I should email in about, but.
Good question. And Daniel, maybe you can, or Elaine, maybe one of you could respond to that one.
Yeah, so I think it's important to know. So when you apply as a part-time versus full-time, there is there's 2 big differences. One, obviously, the time it takes to complete the program. So generally speaking, for a part-time, it'll be, instead of the 4 years, likely 8 years, twice the length, right? I know it's a long time. And then the second part is the tuition. So the tuition costs will basically be the same. It's just spread over a longer period of time, right? So that's the advantage of being able to do it part-time, aside from obviously being able to continue in your work positions and stuff like that. In terms of courses, I think it's a little bit of on a case-by-case basis, right? So there's only 4 courses I think you usually need to take throughout the program, but a lot of those courses prepare you for the next step. So if you apply full-time and you try to sort of break it, break the curriculum down into and to stretch it out, it would depend specifically which course and at what level you're at to be able to do that. So it will require, I mean, John will have to, and your supervisor will have to review what you're trying to do to be able to see if, yes, we can manage this, or no, this cannot happen before this course, because this course prepares you for, your directed reading or something like that, right? So there's always something. It's kind of like think of like a step ladder, right? You can't go 2 steps at a time and then go back once.
Right.
sometimes you can, but not all the time. And I think that's the part that's a little more of a case-by-case basis. In terms of funding opportunities and stuff like that, yes, a lot of the scholarships are geared towards full-time. As you mentioned, there are a few that are also part-time. And then again, I would recommend you go to the Graduate Studies website to see which ones of those are. And also external funding opportunities don't always sort of choose between full-time and part-time. They're just more based on your research. So on the Grad Studies website, there is actually a list of external institutions or placements or places, sorry, that provide funding. So I would recommend just go through there, and maybe some of those match the type of research that you're trying to do, the type of work you're exploring, and that might help you find some of those external scholarships that doesn't matter if it's full-time or part-time, as long as you provide a particular product, which may help you also then do the program as a part-time basis. So hopefully that kind of answers. It's kind of like a long question, but there's a lot of little factors in between, which we would have to sort of take a look at. So I would suggest, so try to organize sort of what you're trying to do and how soon you want to accomplish it, right? So 4 years, 8 years, or somewhere in between, and try to sort of figure out your finances. There's some cases, for example, that you could potentially apply as a full-time, and if you get accepted, we could look into maybe not the first or second year. We can take a look at maybe later on switching from full-time to part-time. Going the other way around,
or vice versa. Oh, harder. Okay.
A lot harder, because so going from a part-time to a full-time is harder because they would depend basically on a spot becoming available later on. So again, just to think about as well. Hopefully that kind of gives you an idea. But yeah, feel free to reach out to us later on a one-on-one, and we can sort of talk more ideas if that helps.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for hogging the floor. Really appreciate it, and thank you very much. I'll be in touch. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Okay, so there's a couple more questions here in the chat. So what kinds of creative work do people submit in their application? I've done a podcast, but if it has to be visual, what are you looking for? Would photography be acceptable? Yeah, I mean, it really is up to you. Whatever you think demonstrates your creative, not just your creative skills, but also the type of creative work that you'd like to do in the program, I would say go with that. It definitely doesn't need to be visual. However, if you think the strongest samples you can provide are visual, then that's great. You should submit that. I think it really depends on your application. So for example, you've done podcasts, but you also do visual work like photography. If your statement of interest is suggesting that you're going to be doing, sort of audio, visual, or multimedia types of production in your project, then maybe it is a good idea to include a bit of both, right? To show the sort of breadth of media production work or media art that you've done in the past. So it's kind of hard to say exactly what it would be, but I would try to tie it as much as possible to your statement of interest. And you can even refer to those samples in your statement of interest. Just point out to the committee that this or that sample kind of gives them an idea of the types of work that you hope to build on in your PhD project.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I thought I saw a hand, but there's no hand anymore. So I guess I'll go to the next one here in the chat, which is, can we have more than 2 referees? Also, as a journalist and former master journalism grad, most of my work is written. Would a slideshow of relevant articles done under 60 seconds, approximately 5 slides, put forward creatively be okay? Okay, so with the first one, with the referees, I think there is a limit, right, Daniel and Elaine? Like there's only 2. I think it only gives you the opportunity to put in contact info for 2 references. So you have to make a choice, I guess, right? Nice to have options though, but you'll have to make a choice as to which 2 referees are going to be able to speak best to the type of work you're going to be doing in the PhD. In terms of your written work, So I think this one depends. It is possible that that written work is creative, right? So I think you're going to have to sort of figure out, okay, well, if all of your work is written in some form, which pieces best demonstrate, practice-based creative elements of what you do, and which demonstrate best more sort of traditional research or scholarly types of knowledge and skills. And I would sort of go about it that way. You could, if you wanted to, put together some kind of a piece of media that demonstrates or sort of gives an overview of the journalistic work you've done, but in a non-written format. That's absolutely fine. We have people who do that for all kinds of different work, who submit, it's a work that isn't necessarily a video from originally, but they put together a little video, right, that sort of provides a number of different views or steps in the process of developing the piece of work that they're trying to showcase. So yeah, that's definitely I think a good way of demonstrating some of the creative work that you're capable of in the program. All right, we do have another one in the chat, but I'm going to go to Isaac, who has you've got your hand up. Isaac, go for it.
Yes, so I just wanted to ask if the funding is also offered to all the accepted international students.
Sorry, I don't think I caught all of that, Isaac. You want to know how many international students we accept, or?
No. If the funding is also offered to all the accepted international students.
Oh, I see. Okay, so is are international students eligible for some of the external funding that we talked about? I think for SSHRC, correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel, Arlene, I think you need to be a Canadian citizen or a resident Canada. Yeah, for those SSHRC external awards. What about the other awards, Daniel? Are some of our international students eligible for some of the other ones?
Yes, they are. So for the Toronto Met Graduate Scholarship, that would be eligible, which is 15,000, and then for the sort of like the internal funding as well that we provide, we'll have some of that as well, as long as they're full-time students. Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Does that help, Isaac?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Great. All right. So one more question in the chat is filmmaking and interdisciplinary work in the visual arts applicable for the program? Yes, absolutely. We've got a number of students in the program right now who have a filmmaking background and interdisciplinary visual arts backgrounds, and they're pursuing branches of that within their PhD work right now. So absolutely, that would be great to include in your application for sure. And then I've already reached out to a few faculty, but haven't heard back yet. I did follow up as well. So what's your recommendation? Yeah, I mean, it's likely just the time of year. I would say a lot of faculty are, it's sort of wrapping up the semester, so it may take a while for you to hear back from them. I would say if it's been around a week or so, you could just email me and I'll see what's happening and try to put you in touch with them. But give them a few days at least to respond. That's it, just due to the time of year. For the creative samples, I've created an app and a game, etc. So shall I share them as a live link or a recorded video? Or would a recorded video be enough? That's an interesting one. I think you could probably do both. I think there's space in your creative samples that you're providing to include the link. You can even include links in your statement of interest if you want, but in the samples for sure, include the link so they can see the original thing that you've produced, the app. And then a recorded video would be nice because then that gives you an opportunity to provide a bit of maybe a bit of context for the app, or sort of show the app in use, things like that. So yeah, absolutely. I think go for both in this case. And then one last question, or second last question in the chat, asked in the Q&A section as well, how many hours would a full-time load be per week? Oh yeah, that's a tricky one. It's hard to say. In terms of the course, like actual class time, that's fairly straightforward. Each class, most classes at TMU, but in the MDI for sure, are 3 hours. So if you have 2 courses per semester, that's 6 hours of in-class time. So that's sort of the minimum. And then of course you've got prep time that you'll need for each of those courses to do the readings, to do whatever assignments you're doing. I would say that most of our students, you know, they treat it as kind of a full-time gig, right? They're only in class for 6 hours, but they're spending a lot of the rest of their, or at least the working days in the week, preparing for those courses, making sure they're doing the readings thoroughly, preparing assignments. In a lot of our courses, we sort of use a very kind of active learning mode. So instead of the professor kind of lecturing for 3 hours, students are actually doing a lot of the kind of interpretation and unpacking of the content, kind of in collaboration with the professor through discussion. So quite often there's presentations to prepare. So yeah, I would say it does pretty well fill the work week as a full-time student. Okay, and Daniel's put in a link there about that question. And then the last one in the chat so far is, it's been a month that I haven't heard back, so I'll reach out. Oh, okay, right. This is about the faculty supervisors. Yeah, if it's been a month, for sure. Feel free to email me. And also, by the way, you can email me about any other questions that you have later on about the application or about the program. Happy to help out with that. Oh, Victoria, yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, John. Also, hi, Elaine. Hi, Daniel. I just had a question about, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do next, but I'm obviously considering a PhD because I'm here. I'm wondering how receptive the program is to, if something happened and I were to receive another opportunity, what would I be able to take time off to pursue that opportunity? And I'm specifically considering like if I was granted a funding opportunity from one of the bodies in Canada, would I be able to take time off to pursue like a project with that funding? Or is this a straight through one and done 4-year opportunity? I know that's kind of a vaguely specific question to ask.
No, it's a good question. There are leaves of absence, right, Daniel? But maybe Daniel, you can speak more to whether this would be kind of an appropriate use of a leave of absence request.
Yeah, I think the leave of absence probably would be the main way to do it. So the regular policy at the university for all masters and PhD programs is when you're full-time, you're basically full-time from when you begin to when you end, as you know. So I think if you, depending on what it is that you want to do and when it happens, you have to sort of figure out the best way to do it. So for example, first semester is not gonna happen. So that's a simple one, because there's no leave of absence in the first semester. So if you don't come in and you get accepted to the fall 2024 and you don't come in, it's not gonna happen. However, maybe it happens in the second year of the program. So depending on, again, which courses you're taking at that time or what you're trying to do, you could potentially take a leave of absence for a semester or 2 or 3, depending on what you need. Obviously, we'll have to get it approved by YSGS and all the dean and so on, but the potential is there for that to happen, yes. If it happens in the later years where you're not necessarily need to attend class and you're working already in your project, again, if you, with the permission of your supervisor and John, the program director, you would have to sort of see if you can sort of, in a sense, almost do both at the same time. maybe your funding opportunity, you can tie it somehow with the project you're working on your PhD somehow. I mean, that in some cases that happens. I think it's a little bit open-ended because we don't know the specifics of it. However, I think there are possibilities to be able to do multiple things like that. I mean, I know, faculty members in our school, they were teaching full-time while also completing their PhD in many cases, right? So things like that do happen. So I think just a matter of trying to make sure that when it happens, it's important. So what year you're in the program you're in, and specifically what semester in some cases, what type of restrictions your funding has. So maybe they say you have to dedicate yourself full-time to this funding opportunity, in which case maybe you cannot do the PhD. But if they say, maybe we're flexible, you can do this, but maybe you have more time to do that. And then lastly, also your own personal life. How busy are you with your own stuff? Do you have a part-time job? Do you have family? Do you have take care of your parents? I don't know, a whole bunch of different things in there that, that happen in life. So you have to figure out what is the range and your ability to basically manage so many things at once. And everybody's a little different. So you'll be the best sort of person to know how much you can handle without burning out. And then that becomes more problematic, right? So if you take on too much sometimes, burnout hits, and then everything goes down. So that's hopefully that kind of answers that a little bit. I think there are possibilities, but we would really need to know more specifics to be able to say yes for sure or no. Like I mentioned before, there's possibility if you start full-time and then you get this amazing opportunity, you could potentially transfer to part-time, for example, in which case you have more time to finish the program, but also more time to dedicate yourself to that funding opportunity or whatever you're doing. So there are options. I would say apply. If you get in, then you have a lot of more choices, happy choices to make. It doesn't really hurt.
That's great. Possibilities. I can work with possibilities. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, Victoria. And it does come up from time to time where, some of our students get a couple of teaching positions, for example, contract lecturer positions in a semester, and they're exciting opportunities and they take them, but it can slow things down, obviously a little bit, which isn't a big problem if you're in, especially if you're in year 3 or year 4, and it's really the dissertation is your focus. You're not worried about keeping up with coursework at that point. But the clock is sort of ticking in the sense that the funding we provide you is based on a 4-year timeline. So, if you do have other sources of funding, like teaching or, different kinds of external opportunities, then, maybe that's not a big problem, right, to add on a 5th year. But if you're really dependent on the TMU funding, then students often want to complete it right at the 4-year mark. Yeah. Great question, though. Okay, I think there's one more here. Is it okay to have one professor name only as well as a co-supervisor name? The second person have a master's and can only be a co-supervisor. Okay, yeah, good question. So yes, co-supervision is a possibility in the MDI program. Don't think we actually have any students who are being co-supervised yet, but it's a TMU policy, I believe, where it's an option for students, often who are working in interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary types of projects. So yeah, that is a possibility. In terms of the second person having only a master's, I actually don't know, and I don't think we've crossed that bridge yet in terms of a co-supervision relationship. I know that normally when you only have one supervisor, the supervisor needs to have a PhD. But if you're being co-supervised, this is a really interesting question. Can just one of those supervisors have a PhD? I'm actually not sure. I'd have to get back to you on that. But maybe a broader question that might come up for others on the call here is that even though your supervisor needs to have a PhD, other committee members only need to have a master's degree. That's kind of the way we've set it up so far. Supervisors need to have a PhD, but other committee members can have a master's. So it sort of broadens the possibilities for you in terms of who can be on your committee. Okay, any other last burning questions? Yes, Victoria.
Hello again. Just a follow-up to that question. When you say PhD, does that include MFAs, which would be a terminal degree, or does it have to be specifically a PhD?
Yeah, good question. In our program guidelines, it does say PhD, for better or for worse, for the supervisor. For the other committee members, no, it could be an MFA. Yeah. Okay. New question: is the deadline for international applicants fixed on December 10th? Daniel, do you want to speak to that one?
Yep. I think I'm just looking at. Yeah, so the deadline, they say December 10th, preferred deadline. It's just more for international students to submit their application. We'll continue to accept applications until January 19th. The advantage of submitting by December 10th is that we'll basically receive those applications from admissions sooner. And the risk of the thing that could happen is if you apply, let's say on the 19th, for example, and admissions will take certain amount of time to process all that, check all your degrees, check your transcripts and so on. By the time we get that application, we may have already prepared sort of like the first round of reviews. So you may miss that. So if you do it sooner, December 10th or anything in between, let's say December 24th, whatever day you want to do, we might still have enough time to see that application, receive it, and then send it with the first round of reviews. Again, the whole idea of the preferred deadline is to try to speed up the process as much as we can for international students, so that they have enough time to get their study permit, right? So that it would be sort of the only negative thing about doing it. If you obviously, you may just start looking right now and so on, and you have to apply by January 19th. We will continue to accept applications all the way to January 19th. Now, after the 19th, we'll basically review how many we have received for international applications, and we have enough that we think we'll be able to enough and acceptable, and they meet the requirements and all those different things. At that point, we'll have to make the decision of closing the program or keeping it open for longer, right? So definitely don't go past the 19th. If you need a few extra days after the 10th, it should be fine. Just try to do it as soon as you can to make sure that we can consider you as soon as possible, basically, for international. For domestic, similar, we also recommend January 19th. The only difference is for domestic applicants, we might keep the program open longer after January 19th, just because we don't have that that study permit sort of like rushing deadline. But same thing, at some point we'll receive enough applications, and that's when we close the admissions completely for both international and domestic. As soon as we close it, by the way, we'll update our websites, and same with the YSGS website with the deadlines, so you guys know.
There a second question from Andy in the Q&A, and that's kind of for John. John, can you see the question from Q&A?
Yeah, so what we do is we will try to review the international applications as soon as we receive them, just because the visa processing time has been such a challenge in the last few years that we're really trying to jumpstart that process. So in terms of the internationals, we'll be reviewing them as they come in. For the domestic applications, we'll wait until January 19th. And then there's a committee that we have that will then have access to all of the applications. And yeah, we'll review all of the ones that were submitted by January 19th. We'll review those all at the same time and rank them and make offers based on that pool of applications submitted by Jan 19. And then it's sort of on an ongoing basis, as Daniel said, until we've got enough students that we've offered to and accepted, and we can close the program.
And John, there is a second question from the Q&A. So from Andy, the question is, if the student didn't get a confirmation or receive a reply from potential advisors before the deadline, does it mean that the student shouldn't apply?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, if it's really, hopefully it doesn't take you that long to get a reply. I really hope not. If that's the case, if it's going on for a week or more, just email me. There might be a reason for that, sabbaticals, etc. So just email me and I'll try to figure that out. But you know, if that your first or second choice of supervisor isn't getting back to you, or you know, is on sabbatical or is away, then just reach out to somebody else on the faculty list, and you can you know, even if they may tentatively agree to be your supervisor, even if you know the first choice that you had that didn't respond ends up becoming your supervisor, that's fine. Maybe you have a committee member then with your second or third choice. Are all students considered for funding automatically, or is there a different application? So for the internal funding opportunities, I believe that's automatic. If you've submitted by January 19th, you're automatically considered for OGS and OGF, and the TMU graduate fellowship, right? Okay, and then the external awards, the SHRC, CGSD, and the regular SHRC fellowships, those are additional applications that you'll need to submit in September. I think it's usually September 30th is when the deadline is for those applications. And we provide a lot of support, actually. I don't think we mentioned that earlier. Within the Catalyst, we have people who can support the development of those proposals for external funding. So yeah, hope that answers the question about consideration for funding. And then Monica asks, if you are receiving domestic scholarships, can you be out of the country during the last years of your PhD because there are no classes? Interesting question. I don't think we've crossed that bridge yet with our current group of students. I think it out of the country. I don't know about that. Daniel, do you know if there's a requirement for them to actually be in Canada for that time?
It would depend on this scholarship, so or what the funding is. So for example, for the internal program funding, the $20,000 that we guarantee, some of that funding is based on actual scholarships, like just basically cash that we provide, like the TMGF award or the TMGDA awards. But another portion is sometimes a GA-ship or an RA-ship and so on. So for that portion, if you're not able to complete the GA-ship or AA-ship position, you may have to sort of rescind that funding or that portion of the funding. We will always try to accommodate as much as we can to still meet the 20. We sometimes can, sometimes cannot, depending on the situation. For the actual awards, it would depend specifically which award you receive for funding. Some awards do require what they call it, Ontario residency. Some don't. So it will be, again, on a case-by-case basis. We'll have to sort of take a look. So the best case scenario, you can plan ahead of time if that's going to be the situation, and then sort of let us know, so that when we are and let your supervisor know, let John know, so we can look into the funding opportunities that might allow for some of those things. So I guess bottom line, I can't really guarantee a full 20 depending on the situation if you're looking for the internal program funding, but we will try to find ways to still provide at least some funding. Just because there are some restrictions to some of the awards, like I think the OGF requires entire residency, for example, which is a $12,000 scholarship. Some of the other ones are a little more flexible that we can sort of see. So hopefully that kind of helps a little bit. So again, possibilities. We thrive on possibilities here, and we try to be creative and try to make it work for you guys at the end of the day. The only other thing is, and aside from funding, is academically, are you okay and to be outside of the country academically for your project, for your research, for your meeting with your supervisors, for all those different things that you have to do? There's certain presentations and things like that. So these are other things you have to consider as well, because it's not just like, oh, there's no classes, I can be anywhere. There's other things that happen at the same time that you may need to be around for. So again, that's another thing that to consider as well if you're planning to do something like that.
And I think there's one more here about spaces in the program. So how many applications do you receive per cohort? And do you add more space in the program based on demand, or is this fixed number of spots, as mentioned earlier. So I guess I'll answer the last part first, which is it is a fixed number. We get all graduate programs in our university get a target number of spots that we're aiming to fill, and we are given that number based on the amount of funded spots in that program. So it is kind of the case where there is a kind of a cap on the number of students. It fluctuates a little bit from year to year in terms of what that number is, but so far it's been around 7-8 students per year, domestic full-time students. And in terms of the number of applications, again, 3-year program, it'll probably fluctuate from year to year. But Daniel, Elaine, do you have a rough ballpark in terms of what we're receiving each year?
Yeah, I think, and I can only speak to the ones we actually received after the vetting process that admission does, because they basically check for degrees and make sure that they meet the GPA requirement and all those different things. So the ones that actually got to the committee last year, I want to say we're around the 40 or so range for about 55, 6, 7 spots. And I can't really do the math in my head right now, but it's about 1 in 5, 1 in 6, 1 in 7, give or take. So if you want looking for a ratio, that's more or less what it is. Now, again, that's the ones that we actually physically get to the committee. In terms of applications, you can add probably another 10 or 20 to that go through. Maybe they didn't meet the deadline, or maybe they didn't, their recommendation was missing, or there's things like that that sometimes basically get the application held back, not meeting the GPA requirements, those kinds of things. So, and things are sometimes in your control as applicants. Always check that you submitted every document. That is the biggest thing I can say right now. Unfortunately, if you're missing one piece of the application, the system will just kind of stop it there. And we don't know until sometimes it's too late, or sometimes we already send enough offers and we can't accept anymore. So at your end as applicant, just make sure you log into your application portal and check everything's submitted, everything's there. You'll have like a little checklist on the right hand side that says, statement of interest done, or whatever's missing will appear there. So just take a look there so that we actually get it. So hopefully that helps and answers a little bit of your questions there about numbers.
Okay, and is there a non-funded option? So we actually don't provide funding to the part-time students. It's only for the full-time students that we provide all of our full-time students with a funding package. So we don't have any non-funded full-time students, but part-time students, yes, that is something we do. So that's a possibility. Okay, well, I seen no more hands or questions in the chat. I think we can probably wrap up. Again, feel free to email me. My email, I'll just put it in the chat here, is jshiga@torontomu.ca. There you go. And feel free to email me with any questions you might have. And then Daniel's just put in the link for all of the different contact info you may need if you have any other questions about the program or the applications. So with that, I'd just like to thank you all for joining the session tonight, and I look forward to seeing your applications. Thanks very much. Have a great evening.